Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Cube, a Japanese horror movie from 2021 that is a remake of the Canadian film from 1997. They awake to find themselves within a mysterious structure, the Cube. 6 men and women have been abruptly trapped inside. An engineer, an employee, a part-time worker, a junior high student, a mechanic, and a company director. They share no connections whatsoever. Unable to comprehend their situation, they attempt to escape, but encounter a succession of lethal traps. Unless their inbuilt codes can be deciphered, there's no way out. As fear and mistrust swirls around them, and despite seeing no end in sight to their torment, they push on into the depths of the structure in order to survive, but will any of them make it out alive? So in regard to my thoughts on the original Cube movie, I think it's a good film. There's like a cool opening death scene and some effective set design. The dialogue worked well, and the character interaction was engaging enough. Pacing was actually pretty brisk in that film. There was some good suspense at times, and the solutions to the maze did make sense. One of my kind of criticisms of the original is that the ultimate explanation for the existence of this cube structure is very oddly contrived in its simplicity. I'll just leave it at that to not spoil it. Acting in that film was also pretty inconsistent, but decent enough. I'm not a huge fan of the original Cube, but it is entertaining, and I have not seen any of the sequels. Now, when I first heard about this Japanese remake, I kind of rolled my eyes, like I do 95% of the time a remake is announced. But, to be fair, there are some aspects of the original that could be improved in theory, so I went into this with kind of a healthy skepticism. Now, as you might expect, this Japanese remake of Cube does have some close similarities to the original, like the set designs, the types of conflicts that emerge between the characters, and how the characters attempt to solve the numbers that are carved into the doorways that are between these individual cube compartments within the bigger cube. There are some other similarities as well, but I was happy to see that the Japanese mixed things up enough to kind of distinguish this from the original. So, for example, the types of characters who are trapped in this cube is quite different. They're not as... They are stereotypical to a degree, but maybe not as stereotypical as the original. And the more aggressive or dangerous characters are not as obvious at the very beginning of this film. I did kind of like that. There are a few scenes that could be considered to be dramatically impactful, but not significant. There's a little bit of a blip on the radar in terms of your emotions at times. There's one death scene near the middle that I think worked the best out of all of them, if only because I did actually like the character who got clipped in that scene. So I think that's kind of like the best scene of the movie, in my opinion. It's right in the middle. The downside, however, is that these characters are generally more reserved than the characters of the original, which results in patches of bland interaction at times. Also, a few of the scenes near the end, which are supposed to be more emotionally resonant, do not really work as well as they probably could have. Like I said, that scene at the midpoint is probably the best scene in terms of dramatic impact. Runtime is about 1 hour and 48 minutes, which is 18 minutes longer than the Canadian original. Consequently, the pacing is a little bit slower in this one. There are some gaps where the drama does take over, and I do think it hurts the film to a degree. I think actually during the second half, when the tempo kind of slows down a bit instead of ramping up. There are a few confrontations between the characters that are pretty good, and I felt like the momentum that was generated near that midpoint was not sustained for as long as it should have been. I do enjoy the final few minutes of the film, but the meat of the big finale was kind of underwhelming to me. I do think the original film had more satisfying climax. Acting in this is on par with the original, if not better, actually. It's not great or anything, but there's a consistency here that was kind of lacking in the original, which had some pretty badly acted moments. The ultimate explanation for the cube in this one is more vague and open-ended, and I liked it more. So the explanation in the original was like, it was just kind of unconvincing to me. And the problem with a film like this is that there are obvious explanations that you could think of while watching it that they could provide, but those are like very fantastical in concept. It's kind of difficult to balance that fantastical, like this huge structure of a cube. Like, who the heck built this thing and why was it built? Like, it's tough to kind of balance that fantastical type situation with a more, I guess, realistic explanation that's convincing. And in this remake, they just opted to just lean more towards ambiguity. They didn't get into the details, but they pepper in a few little clues here and there that you can form your own opinions on it. And I did like that. Set designs are very good. Striking use of color. I like the sets very much. I think they're brightly lit, more brightly lit than you might expect, and I think that helps. Some of the deadly traps are pretty good. The opening death scene is like, it's utterly ridiculous, and I hope it was meant to be blackly humorous, because if not, it's unintentionally funny due to its completely inaccurate depiction of human anatomy. I don't want to spoil any of the death scenes in this movie, but one involves like sharpened blades, another involves like sound waves to a degree, etc. And I do think the final death is even more absurd than the opening one. I did chuckle a few times during the death scenes in this movie. But again, that death scene in the middle, which I haven't really mentioned in terms of what exactly the trap was my favorite. Now, from what I've said so far, you could probably tell that Cube is a mixed bag of a film. I do think overall that it's watchable at the very least. Generally speaking, this movie is kind of lacking something to take it to the next level. If I tried to put my finger on it, I think it needed a greater number of defining, memorable sequences where everything comes together and you feel an actual impact. I think this film is just lacking impact to it, which is a problem. And that's the fundamental difference between the original and this remake. There's certain things about this remake I actually like a little bit more than the original, but when all is said and done, that original film, despite its flaws, had more of an impact, I think, when you're watching it. And I think the original is better than this. So, do I recommend this Japanese remake of Cube? I cautiously recommend it. It's definitely better than your typical, like, American remake of a Japanese horror film, but that's not really saying much. If I were to watch this again, it would probably be for the set designs and the cool concept. I'll probably end up watching it again, because I do like the set designs a lot in this. But this Cube movie is currently available on Blu-ray and DVD on the DDD House website. And, if you want more exciting, recent Japanese horror films from like the past 5 or 6 years, check out my video that I put out last year at this time called Where Are All the Japanese Horror Movies Nowadays? So I'll put a link in the description box for that video in case you want some Japanese horror recommendations from recent years. And as always, folks, I will see you next time.